In our contemporary reality, large corporations exert considerable influence over everyday life. But what happens when this influence goes unchecked, transforming into outright control? In the realm of speculative fiction, we often encounter dystopian futures where corporations hold immense power, often at the expense of the individual and society. Today, let's delve into these corporate dystopias, exploring how they arise and the implications of their dominance. Welcome to another episode of Just-in-Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Just before we get into today's video, I want to encourage you to check out my merch shelf brought to you via Teespring. I've got some cool shirts, some bags, some glasses and mugs up there, so check them out and help me make more awesome content. Okay, enough of that. Let's get cracking with corporate dystopias. A common theme in dystopian sci-fi is the ascension of corporations to positions of supreme authority. Sometimes this occurs because of a void that arises when traditional governments have faltered or been usurped. In such cases, power tends to flow towards those best equipped to take advantage of the situation, and often that will be a well-organized and funded corporation. However, that's not the only case in which corporations will take over. In some scenarios, governments may willingly relinquish power due to crisis, instability, or the tantalizing allure of corporate efficiency and presumed stability. This is essentially privatization run wild. Now, I've got nothing against privatization in principle. Some government functions really do run better when run by a corporation and funded by means of something like a toll or whatever. But, like most things in life, if you push it too far and you let it go unchecked, suddenly you have a corporate dystopia on your hands. So let's take a look at an example of such a corporate dystopia and how it came to rise. Shadowrun is a role-playing game set in a fusion of cyberpunk, fantasy, and crime genres. Megacorporations in this universe are more influential than governments, controlling everything from resources and technology to magic and mythical creatures. Although in some cases, mythical creatures are in control of the corporation, so you're really losing either way. Anyway, these corporations are practically autonomous, operating with very little oversight and conducting shadow wars with each other, often employing runners, this is the player characters, to carry out clandestine operations against other corporations. Megacorporations in this world didn't just spring up overnight. They evolved, thrived, and multiplied in the fertile ground of a world racked by social, economic, and environmental crises. Amid the chaos, these corporations offered stability and progress. Their influence grew and they became more powerful than the traditional governments. The rise of these megacorporations in Shadowrun was facilitated by a combination of events, including the awakening of magic, the rise of sentient non-human races, the proliferation of cybernetic augmentation, and several socio-political upheavals. Each of these events presented opportunities that the corporations seized, adapting and evolving not just to survive, but to thrive. Each step on the daisy chain looked fine in principle, but when you take it as a whole, it lands you in a corporate dystopia. In Shadowrun, there were multiple disasters that led corporations to leapfrog into governmental positions. But you don't need those disasters. They just hurry the process along. Your path to dystopia can instead just be a gradual process of half-inching, as corporations slowly take on more and more of the roles traditionally held by government bodies. This extension of corporate influence can range from the maintenance of infrastructure and provision of essential services to more substantial roles that encroach on the very functions of government and the application of violence. The average citizen might even cheer for this encroachment because it could mean a level of efficiency that governments, with their layers of bureaucracy, are often criticized for lacking. Services could be streamlined, processes could be optimized, and theoretically, the quality of life could improve. For those people, the corporation's services. When a corporation takes over these roles, their primary obligation is to their shareholders, not the public. The drive for profit could supersede the drive for public welfare. They would look after those who paid them and maybe their employees who make them money. Everyone else, well, they're not going to be important to a corporation. And this corporate dominance can create a society marked by stark class divisions, where access to basic services is determined purely by your economic standing. Are you a corporate worker or not? Are you rich enough to buy the services you need or not? If the answer to both of those is no, you probably live on the fringes of society and eke out a living in a hand-to-mouth fashion. The dystopian world presented in Shadowrun gives us a glimpse into such a corporate takeover of government functions. Runners, the player characters, generally make their living on that fringe of society, working for the corporate as disposable contractors in the Shadow Wars. Their lives are in stark contrast to those employed by the corporations, whose lives are of course much lower than those who actually own the corporations. And so you can see this class system evolving with the bulk of people living outside of the corporations in the fringes. And if you enjoyed that conversation about the rise of corporations, give this video a thumbs up, and let's talk about how corporations could control the world in a corporate dystopia. Once in power, corporations maintain their dominance through control of resources and technology, and by exerting political influence. This stranglehold allows them to reshape society according to their interests. Let's take a look at some examples from various fictional universes. First up, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation from the Alien franchise. This corporation controls advanced technology and wield immense political influence, often at the expense of their employees and the wider public. They prioritize their profit and their power, willing even to risk human lives to study and weaponize the xenomorph species. And this, of course, leads to the main conflict of the entire Alien franchise. In a similar vein, the OCP Corporation from Robocop has not only privatized the Detroit Police Department, but also invests heavily in cutting-edge technology, resulting in the creation of Robocop. This corporation uses its control of law enforcement and technology to influence and manipulate the city, driven more by their bottom line than public interest. Indeed, this is an example where I would say your corporate dystopia has overtaken government. Because if government loses control of the application of violence in order to maintain society, they've kind of lost control of the society. Whoever holds the stick that keeps society in check is the controlling influencer on society, in my opinion. Another example of corporate dystopias comes to us from the world of gaming, from Deus Ex. So here, the Versa Life Corporation, a biotechnology company that controls and develops a wide array of technologies, including the life-altering augmentation and the Ambrosia vaccine. In this organization, the monopoly of these two vital resources and the heavy influence in both technology and politics allows Versa Life to manipulate global events for their benefit. If you look at these three examples, you can see that corporations can exert enormous control in a dystopian setting. Basically, if they gain control over one thing, usually technological or magical, but something critical to society, they use this as the thin edge of the wedge to drive forward and take control over the necessary functions of society, and then before you know it, they have a stranglehold on the civilization. And oops, corporate dystopia. But surely corporations can't just hold everyone under their thumb by violence, right, or political influence. Well, no. People have to be given some form of entertainment, something to divert them from the daily grind. And there is no better example of a corporate dystopia giving the people that entertainment than the world of Xcrawl. In Xcrawl, dungeon crawling, a deadly undertaking in traditional fantasy settings, is turned into professional sport. These lethal games are managed and broadcast by powerful corporations, providing mass entertainment akin to the Roman concept of bread and circuses. This phrase, derived from the satiric poet Juvenal, referred to the practice of Roman politicians providing free wheat and costly spectacles in the Colosseum as a means of gaining political power through populism. And that bread and circus mentality is very much alive and well in the world of Xcrawl. Here, common people are distracted by the spectacle of dungeon crawls, the circuses, and at the same time, those who might be able to amass enough power to rebel, which is the athletes, right? Because they actually have magical abilities. They could present a threat to the corporations, but instead they are kept in check with a promise of wealth and fame, albeit at the very high risk of death. The masses are kept entertained and placated and given the minimum they need to survive, even as the socio-economic gap widens and the corporations grow ever more powerful. But this doesn't go on indefinitely, right? Well, hit the thumbs up button and let's talk about resistance and rebellion in corporate dystopias. In the shadows of the monolithic corporate entities, a counterculture inevitably arises. Those who live in the fringes of society, whether by choice or circumstances, form a vital part of the resistance against corporate rule. If we go back to our example of Shadowrun, alongside the established corporate order, an extensive black market thrives. Here, goods and services denied or controlled by the corporations becomes accessible. This black market, often powered by the very technology corporations monopolize, offers the common citizen a semblance of freedom and autonomy, and it also provides an arena for resistance. Furthermore, those who find themselves unable to abide by the corporate rules or who refuse to partake in their machinations become the outcasts in the society. Yet these outcasts often form the backbone of the rebellion against the corporate dominance. Consider again the runners of Shadowrun. Initially employed as deniable assets by the corporations, these skilled individuals often find themselves at odds with their employer's moral bankruptcy and oppressive practices. Over time, many of the runners, disillusioned with the corporate world, turn their skills towards rebellion. Now, while they might not be able to rectify the whole system, they can use their intimate knowledge of corporate workings to expose misdeeds, to sabotage operations, and to rally public sentiment against certain of the corporations. And it won't bring down the whole system, but it can offer a kind of checks and balances system where if your corporations become too excessive, one of them can be brought down by this rebellion, leading to reform in the rest of them and a kind of dampening of that extreme control. Of course, this makes for an amazing storytelling place. You can have your group of plucky rebels setting out to bring down one of these corrupt organizations and to make the world a little bit better. You could even have it go all the way and have them force the corporations into submission to proper governments, reinstituting democracy, at least for a while. So, let's say that you want to build your very own corporate dystopia. How would you go about it? So, here are my 5 core principles for building a world based on corporate dystopia. 1. Establish the rise of the corporation. How did corporations achieve their power? Did they exploit a governmental collapse? Was there a societal crisis? Or did the corporations simply outmaneuver political entities over time and claim the role of government for themselves? This history will not only inform your world's current state, but also shape the citizens' attitude towards these corporations. If the corporations picked civilization up from the floor of a disaster, citizens might even hail the corporation as heroes, for a time anyway, as we see in the Amtrak books by Patrick Tilley. 2. Detail the control mechanism. How do corporations maintain their dominance? Are they monopolizing resources and technology? Are they influencing politics or controlling vital aspects of daily life? The extent and nature of their control will underscore the challenges faced by your characters and your society at large. 3. Highlight your social inequality. Corporate dystopias come with stark social disparities. Showcase the contrast between the luxuries enjoyed by the corporate elite and the hardships enjoyed by the average citizen. This contrast can drive tension and conflict in your story. And 4. Showcase the underbelly. Corporate control is rarely absolute. There will be elements of society that resist, evade, or exploit the corporate system. This might manifest as a black market, or a rebel group, or individuals like runners in Shadowrun. These elements not only enrich your world, but honestly, the best corporate dystopia stories always involve the underbelly in some way. And 5. Illuminate the path to resistance. No dystopia is complete without that glimmer of hope, the hint of rebellion. Plan out how resistance to corporate rule might emerge and evolve. Are there whistleblowers within corporations? Do oppressed citizens rise against their corporate overlords? Or do outcasts become unlikely heroes? Building a corporate dystopia takes a keen understanding of power dynamics and societal structures. It challenges us to consider the implications of unchecked corporate power and encourages us to explore narratives of resistance and change. And as with any world-building endeavor, the devil is always in the details. And those are my thoughts on corporate dystopia. If you want to say thanks for this video, super thanks is enabled, or you could become a member of the channel and get early access to videos. If you enjoyed this video, check out my video on creating doomsday scenarios in Fantasy World, where I discuss the run-up to apocalyptic events, and I will see you soon for another one.